What's up, guys? Rogue9 here, and thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us? I don't know what I'm saying.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us in Pete's hotel room.
Welcome to this special episode of Casting Couch.
That's it, yeah. What's up, guys? Rogue9 here, and welcome to this special mini episode of the Hot Breach podcast. If you're listening to this on your audio device, whatever that may be, and we sound a little bit different, that's because we are casting from a hotel room in Montreal at the Six Invitational. Also, sadly, due to scheduling issues, Flank is not able to join us for today, so it's just Pete and me.
Yeah, we wanted to just say that because obviously some people are going to ask, where's Get Flanked? But no, I think he's at the event.
He is the most important member, really, arguably, but sadly...
He's one of the most handsome members of the podcast.
True.
He's top 3.
You're definitely missing out on that, but nevertheless, that's how it is. That's how we will have to work through from here. We're traveling, we will have to make do, and I think getting something out is better than nothing. So really, this podcast will be going out after the grand reveal at the Six Invitational, so you'll have seen a lot of the information that Ubisoft is presenting, and what we want to do today is really discuss some of that stuff. And first and foremost, what I would really like to talk about is the price changes to the operators. So in the reveal, it would have been shown that going forward, there will be sort of a price graduation tiered from year to year. So operators that are between 0 and 12 months old, so from the last year, they will be full priced at 25,000 renown. Then 1 to 2 years is 20,000 renown. Then 2 to 3 years is 15, and 3 to 4 years will only be 10,000. So unlocking new operators for new players or anyone starting a new account, it will be quicker and easier.
Yeah, I think it's really good news for people coming to Siege. They announced that, you know, Rainbow Six has 45 million players, so there are people joining the game all the time.
Certainly heading towards that now.
Yeah, so, and it's something when I speak to friends that have been out of the game for a while, they talk about how hard it is to get back into it because of all the new operators and just learning them. And when you add on to the fact with new players that they actually have to save up and unlock all of those operators, it does become, you know, an encumbering kind of force within the game, stopping people getting into it and really enjoying it. And also you have to understand that having all of these operators is actually really key to making some tactical decisions. I mean, going into a match and not having the option of choosing a Hibana or a Capital or whatever you need. So I think this is a really nice change to the game, that they're going to reduce the price of operators going forward. And in fact, on previous episodes of the podcast, this is something that we've spoken about.
Yeah, it's always something that we always mention that we're kind of out of touch with, because we've been with the game throughout its entire lifetime, from the very beginning. For us, and obviously because we cover the content, we do get the season passes, so we don't unlock operators, and we're a little bit disconnected from that. But the more you think about it, really, is the more you see that someone starting new right now and maybe getting one of the cheaper versions of the game, it's daunting to have so many operators that have been released over the years, and we're going to be seeing more released, obviously 2 every season going forward, up until the grand goal of 100 operators. It becomes almost an insurmountable hurdle. You're just faced with almost hundreds of hours of playtime to unlock all of these. So it's nice to see that Ubisoft is thinking about this. How can we make this game more accessible to new players, or even players who are starting a new account?
For sure, and I think, excuse me, one of the things I quite like about it is, rather than just giving new players all the operators, they still have to unlock them, so there is still a sense of progression. There is still a reason to come back to the game and accrue the renown. The renown still means something, because you still will need to spend money or in-game currency to unlock the operators, but just less so, because there are so many now for people to unlock. What is it, 48?
We're on 44 right now, I believe.
44 operators, and you know, they spoke about 100. I mean,
that's actually an interesting thing in of itself, and I think when we get back to the normal podcast we can discuss this, because we're on 44 operators now. That means there's 56 operators more to go, 2 every season, that's 8 a year. That means that the plan is for Siege to go for at least another 7 years. That is a discussion in and of itself.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you want to touch on it just really quickly.
Go on then.
Well, I mean, obviously, like, we love Rainbow Six Siege. We want it to have continued support for years to come, but it's 7 years too many. You know, I mean, a couple more, 2 or 3 more years, and then you've got the new consoles and...
What happens when the new consoles come out? And that's completely out of Ubisoft's hands. I mean, I spoke about it briefly with Alex, and his hope, it almost seemed, his wish and dream was that when Sony and Microsoft bring out new consoles, that they will be fully backward compatible. That is what he's he's got all his fingers and toes crossed. He really hopes that they can just continue with Siege as it is, without, because one thing he was really conscious about was they do not want to split the player base in any way. They don't want to have to bring out a new version for the new consoles that is not compatible and not crossover compatible with the old version of the game, so that all of a sudden you have people playing Rainbow Six on the Xbox One and the PS4 who can no longer play with new players on the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox 2, I guess. I don't know what Microsoft.
But honestly, that's a really good point, because if that happened, it would immediately, overnight, kind of render Siege this sort of obsolete game, because people would be buying those new consoles, getting them for Christmas, birthday presents, and they would have a new console and not be able to play like their favourite game.
It's a significant hurdle.
It is a hurdle that they need to sort of look into and think about really going forward, because the rumours are that it's only a few years away, these new consoles.
Yeah, I've heard maybe 1 year from now in Christmas, or maybe 2 years at the most, we're seeing new consoles. And it makes sense. Like, think about how long the PS4 and Xbox One have been out now. And we've already seen the mid-life cycle refresh. We've already seen both of these consoles bumped up a little bit, like we saw for the previous generation. We're not an awful long way. Maybe a year or two is a lot of the stuff I've been hearing. And yeah, the question is, when you have a game that is planned to run for another 7 years... Let's hope that Sony and Microsoft are considerate of that. Otherwise, wow, it's a problem to figure out for sure. But hey, we're getting far ahead of us now. Let's maybe talk a little bit more about year 4 of Rainbow Six. So we are getting for sure 2 new operators every season, and I'm actually really happy to see that Ubisoft are sort of moving into newer territories. I mean, something that people always bring up is that we have, is it now 7 US operators? 7, we just always, there's US operators. And it makes sense. I have no doubt that the United States, or North America in general, is the largest market for games in general, and maybe probably for Siege as well. So I get it, no doubt. But it's really nice to see new operators coming in from new regions. Obviously, Season 1, we all know, that's going to be Australia. We're getting 2 new Australian operators.
And it's the only season where we get a new map. A brand new map in the game. So it comes right at the beginning of the year, then you've got the whole year, and we're going to come on to it with just the reworks.
Let's call that foreshadowing. Okay. So let's talk about the operators first, and then we'll go into the maps. But it is a very good point. Yes. So 2 Australian operators coming in Season 1, and that's actually the only time we're getting 2 operators from the same country. Other than that, we're getting mixed stuff. So Season 2, we will have a US Secret Service and a Danish operator. Undefined.
Undefined, but a lot of people have been asking for a Scandinavian sort of country.
Absolutely. I mean, when you think about Pro League, you look at the EU Pro League, how many Scandinavian players are there?
Yeah, you got Swedish, Finnish players.
I mean, Ents. They're a Nordic team through and through. You've got Chaos. That's a Nordic team through and through. Then obviously on Penta, you've got Nordic players like Denmark and Finland and Sweden. They almost, I mean, if you think about EU Pro League, French players and Nordic players, that's mostly Pro League. So it's long overdue, I think, that we see some Scandinavian special forces. So great to see Denmark in there.
I know, sorry to interrupt, I know it'd be kind of controversial, but I would have almost liked a Scandinavian-themed DLC. It's not that I have an issue with another sort of US operator coming in, but we do have a lot, to be fair. So it would have been kind of cool to have, I don't know, a Norwegian and a Danish, or a Swedish and a Danish, something like that. Although there are rivalries between those countries, like in the UK there's a rivalry between England and Scotland, so I understand that for sure. But I feel like it would have been nice to have a Scandinavian-themed season. But that being said, it's nice at least this year to be getting some really different countries being added into the game, which Ro's about to come on to.
Yeah, and I think also maybe one last comment on Season 2 is that we are getting US, but Secret Service, and that's interesting, because that again is very, very different from a lot of the special forces we've seen so far. We started off with FBI police, and then we had Navy SEALs. Then what was the fellow supposed to be the guy who kind of went AWOL?
Was it Delta Force?
I think it was initially sort of the rumours were Delta Force, and then they kind of, in his backstory, they kind of never mentioned it.
Yeah, I'm having a bit of a brain fart. I'm not.
No, I do remember it. I mean, I just think. I think in his backstory, there's a whole part of how he literally goes AWOL in Afghanistan. He just bums around the country. He's missing, and I mean that is an interesting backstory. Sure, but it's also a little bit controversial because we've seen this fellow in real life getting arrested for leaving his post in Afghanistan. That's it's an interesting choice to have that as a backstory for.
He went full emo. He's emo, isn't he?
He really did. What is his name? Let's come up with his name.
Maverick.
Maverick, of course. How can I blank on that? There you go. Of course, it's Maverick. Yeah. So I think the whole pre-release talk was Delta Force, and then eventually it's just like, let's not mention what he is.
Emo Squad.
That's the one. So, long story short, I don't know how we go around in circles on this. Long story short, Secret Service. Cool, that's something different. That's something new.
Yeah, it's kind of different. It's like something from 24, or one of the characters in that. Yeah,
for sure. Season 3, we are going to Central and South America. We're getting Peru and Mexico.
Makes a lot of sense, I think, to have another sort of, at least, we're getting one operator from South America. I said in a recent video we haven't had any South Americans since we had Capital and Caveira added to the game. And then a bit of love for Mexico as well. So, yeah, I think, and as well there's that regional thing, although, like it's Central and South America, but they're from the sort of similar part of the world at least. So I can see the logic in putting them together,
Yep, why not, for sure. And then finally, Season 4, we're really going far out there, and I'm excited to see that. We're getting Kenyan and Indian Special Forces.
That's really cool, because I know 100% this game is really big in India.
Yeah.
Really big in India. In fact, we can come on to it in a bit, more foreshadowing, but I know, we see a lot of Indians on Western EU servers, don't we? Because I don't think they have a home server to play on. But for sure, we know it's a popular game because they play on EU servers with a ping of 150.
Yeah, the servers, that's still an open question.
Yeah.
We literally 1 year ago now, we were doing, I think, a video just like this when we talked about the amazing news that South Africa was getting servers and we were getting maybe Asian servers as well. Yeah.
There's no news on it. The Invitational last year, they announced those South African servers, and there's been nothing since then, no mention since then, and even poking some of the devs, literally yesterday, the answer was, we're not quite sure. Yeah.
Let us follow up on that. So hopefully they will actually follow up on that. Hopefully we will have some news to share on that, because I mean, when you see these regions getting more and more popular, people getting into the game, it's an online game. You need to have the server infrastructure globally that allows everyone to play the game to a reasonable standard. I understand that not everyone can literally live 2 miles away from the nearest server and that you can have a ping of 9 milliseconds for everyone. I understand that's just not possible. But yeah, we do need to make sure that every region has a chance at playing Siege properly.
Yeah, I mean, if you're selling the game in India, it's only fair on those people that they have servers to connect to, locally, reasonably locally, and the same with the people in South Africa. It's not fair on them, and they get abuse in-game because people think that they're hopping regions and doing all sorts of different things using VPNs or whatever. Maybe it is something that's out of Ubisoft's hands because it's not their servers, they use Microsoft servers, but the thing that is in their hands is communication. Communication, because when you make an announcement and you say, this is coming, and then a year later it hasn't come, and we're back at the same event, the Invitational again, and there's no news on it. I think at that point they really ought to be making it clear what is going on, even if it's not their fault, right? Like, even if they are pretty
especially if it's not their fault.
Even if, because people will be open to that if they explain that they're waiting on the infrastructure from the Microsoft Azure servers or what have you. So yeah, a bit more information, I think.
Yeah, exactly. With that, maybe let's move on to the maps. Now, of course, Season 1, Outback, I almost said Outbreak.
I know, it's so easy to do that.
Because, yeah, you think about the new year, it's always Outbreak. Yeah. But no, it's actually Outback. Of course it is. So Outback, new map. We've played it.
It's good.
It's always hard to judge a map when you're playing in a sort of in a capture session with strangers, and you're kind of trying to get the new operators and showcase them, but you're not really trying to play. You're kind of also play. It's always a difficult thing within.
All your settings are different, and
within like a few hours of just having a go on a PC that isn't your own to make a full judgment. And I mean, obviously, you're constantly playing. You're constantly under pressure to get those clips, so you don't even have the time to just. I'm going to walk around this entire map and look at it.
Yeah.
Long story short is, I'm going to reserve full judgment. It felt okay.
I liked it, but I will agree with you that you cannot appraise a map on a couple of hours play on like a LAN environment that we were playing on. You cannot like give a real good overview of how good that map is going to be in 3 months. You can't say it's going to go straight into Pro League and be a ranked favourite, because that's BS, basically.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it though, and I found it reminiscent of sort of kind of like Oregon/Clubhouse. There were some things there that really reminded me of those two maps, and some of the stuff we're hearing from Ubisoft seems that they're very proud of the map. So fingers crossed it will turn out, you know, given more playtime, to be a very good map. But it would be disingenuous, like you say, to come out here and say...
I'll tell you one thing I can say for sure is I like that it's a brighter map. It doesn't have those dark, dingy corners, and it's not, oh my god, Hereford, where everything... I've said this before. It's Operation Grimsky. Yes, it's England and it rains there. Boo-hoo. Yes, stereotypical nonsense. But God, what a dingy, depressing, dirty.
Villa as well, man. I find Villa really dark. You contrast that to a map like Coastline, so colourful and vibrant, and then you get maps like Villa and Hereford Base almost back to back. And I do feel that they're overly dark. So yeah, I'm glad to see a brighter map.
Yeah, and it makes the map more competitive. I mean, if everyone can see the opponents and there are no issues with, oh, I died to a guy who was almost invisible, it's better. I mean, I get that hiding somewhere in a dark corner can be a strategy, but I think everything equal, on average, it's better to have a brighter map where everyone can see and be done with it. And I'm happy to say that at first glance, Outback looks like literally more of a coastline. It's not as colourful because it's not a club, and there's no disco music playing, but it is nice and bright, and you can see what's going on.
Look, I can't wait to see how it pans out, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I'm pretty hopeful. That's about as far as we can go, I think, at the moment.
And that's Season 1, and then we have 3 more seasons, 3 more maps. Every map is planned to come... Well, every season is planned to come with 1 map, what they're calling a map rework. Now, there will also be map buffs along the way, but those are basically off of the annual schedule. So they've obviously by now revealed the roadmap, so we know what we can expect season to season. But the map buffs, the smaller changes, those are purposefully left out, and I think that's a decent move because it gives Ubisoft the breathing room to put these maps out when they're ready, when they're done. They don't have to work to a schedule and then maybe be forced to release a map buff when they're not ready for it. So map buffs will be a thing, but the big announcement is that we will be getting 1 map that is significantly changed each season, but they will be old maps. And in fact, let me tell you them right now. So we're getting Canal, Cafe, and Theme Park.
Theme Park, yeah. I'd like to say one thing on that, because I think there's always been a distinction in the community about what a map buff and what a map rework is. So if we look back to the last year of content we had in Rain Basic Siege, Hereford Base, that was what we see as a rework. Excuse me. So that was a completely new map. You know, it was like a delete the old map and create a new map and put that in the game, and it was completely new. And then you got the buffs like Clubhouse, which, you know, there was a really good percentage of that map that changed, but it wasn't a completely new map. You could tell it was the same map, just basically made more competitive. I feel with the bits we've seen, and you've probably seen now in the grand reveal, I feel like there's been a bit of a blurring of the lines here between what a rework is and what a map buff is. And I feel, for example, if you've seen the cafe one, that's being called a map rework, right?
Yes.
Not a map buff.
Yes.
But that is still cafe, so it's like a bit bigger than what we envisaged a map buff to be last year, but not as much as what we envisaged the old reworks to be. So it's kind of like there is a distinction to be made there. I don't feel like these reworks are going to be as big as Hereford Base.
Exactly. I think that's a bit of a shame, because even last year when we were told, okay, there will be map reworks, which is just Hereford. It's the same map, but it's a new map, yeah. Right? And then we have the buffs, which is the same map, but with competitive changes. That was the definition. And you know what? People were confused. Mm-hmm. Like when I made videos talking about map buffs, people accused me of clickbaiting because I was talking about buff, and a buff is something that gets people excited. That's not my choice.
It's Ubisoft terminology.
I didn't make that up. I did not make that up. None of us did. That was Ubisoft choosing to have the two different changes and to make sure that we can understand that they are different, because one of them's a rework, which is the whole change, the same theme but a completely new map, and then we have the buffs, which then are the same map with small changes. And yeah, I think you're completely right. Now things are getting even more confusing, because the three new maps, well, the three reworked maps, the three changed maps that we're going to get in year 4, they're being called reworks, but they are not full reworks as per Ubisoft's own definition. I'm expecting, obviously, more changes, more ingrained, more in-depth changes than we saw, for instance, for Consulate. Because Consulate, I'll say Consulate, it was nice because it was unexpected.
Yes.
We weren't expecting to get a map buff, and we basically got it for free. We got it included. But at the end of the day, moving a wall, including a couple new bomb sites, they were minor upgrades. And I'm fully expecting that for these 3 reworks, we're going to see more than that for sure. Maybe more along the lines of Clubhouse, but I would be surprised if we see like full new maps just based on the old idea, like we saw for Hereford.
I think Canal is probably going to be the big one, but, you know, looking at like Cafe, look, we're grateful, don't get us wrong. I think we're just saying that there is a slight sort of blurring of the lines as to what we were told in the past. Confusing. I mean, if Cafe is going to be a much better map, yeah, you know, hooray, that's a brilliant thing. It's just, we always thought of the rework being almost like a delete the old map, create a new one. So is that just a little bit surprising, I suppose, the point was.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's going to cause confusion, for sure. But at the end of the day, something that is on my mind as well is maybe that's a good thing, because you think about Hereford, it is like creating a new map, but it's even harder for the developers, because they have to kind of somehow keep the theme and feel of the old map while making a completely new one. I almost find that it's probably easier to just come in and make a completely new map that is competitive and well balanced and be done with it, rather than have to make a balanced, well thought out, competitive map, but somehow keep the look and feel of an old map and the theme. It's literally just, it doesn't give us as players anything of added quality, and it makes the life of the developers harder. So at the end of the day, I think having these maps that are getting changed, and I'll go over them again, so it's Canal, Cafe and Theme Park, having them changed but not completely new while keeping the old feel, I think that's probably actually the better approach.
Yeah, I agree with you. The thing I would probably add, though, is I think with some of the DLC maps, they have to have them in the game, I believe, because of the way the season passes were sold. So the season passes were sold with the roadmap, which told you you were getting these maps, and that's why they can't take them out of the game. But obviously now we're getting so many maps in the game that they do need to go back and tweak the ones they've got, I guess, before adding new ones in, because of the data limitations. You know, like if you own a console and you download it and it's like taking up your whole console, so you cannot add other games on there. It's ludicrous, right?
Your PlayStation basically turns into the Siege machine, because you can't play anything else because the game is taking up all of your hard drive space. Yeah, it doesn't work. We're talking about a 10-year game. We mentioned it earlier. Imagine there's a new map with every season for the next 7 years. It's ludicrous. I mean, not only is it technically impossible, even you start running into problems on PC where you need an entire hard drive to play Siege. That's a problem. And then there's also sort of the player comfort problem. Like, how many maps can you really memorize and be an expert at and be competitive on?
I agree with you. I think 1 to 2 maps, new maps a year, is the sweet spot. One map, okay, if we're getting these reworks, because it's going to freshen up the maps, you know, and there's 3 of these reworks in the game, so it's definitely going to freshen up the content. And I guess you could argue new players coming in, they're not, you know, there's not this sort of continual addition of new maps that they have to go ahead and learn, so there is that argument to it as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the operators more than the maps, to me, are one of the key things. But that being said, maps do become stale over time, and you do need fresh maps added into the game. It's just at what rate you do it, really.
Yeah. Good point. Operators. You mentioned operators. Great segue. Let's talk about operators. Specifically, let's talk about some old operators that are getting reworked. Lion and Glaz. We've been hearing about Lion and Glaz changes, rumors as well as official mentions. There was an AMA where they were mentioned. We've been hearing about this almost now for seasons, right? And I mean, a lot of people that have been really pestered by playing against Lion or Glaz for that matter, for them these changes are long overdue, and now finally we have some details on how Lion and Glaz will work.
Yeah.
And when we'll be seeing that. So, as far as I understood, they won't actually be coming out at the beginning of the new season. That is dedicated to the new operators, the new map. Everything is about Burnt Horizon. But then, mid-season, we're expecting to get major changes to the operators, specifically Glaz and Lion.
Yeah.
So Glaz is, I think, that's a really straightforward and a really elegant change. The problem with Glaz is, when Glaz came out, think about it back then. His gadget, his unique ability, the one thing that made Glaz special was a flip-up sight.
It was a bit pants.
Like, okay, early on maybe, when you thought that a close-range sight is maybe better for close-range gunfighting, and then you have a long-range sight when you're taking long shots, and being able to switch between the two, where no one else can do that, you have to pick one or the other. Yeah, okay, and then eventually over time, players got good, the meta developed, and it was just, let's put ACOGs on everything, right? If you can put an ACOG on something, yes, arguably, at very close range, when someone suddenly appears out of a doorway right next to you and you're flicking on that person, having lower magnification can make it easier to track the target, but with practice, you can literally fight face-to-face against an operator with an ACOG. It doesn't really, if you practice with it, an ACOG doesn't really mean you can't fight at close range.
No, but there are advantages in close quarters to not having the ACOG, for sure. I mean, you have a better field of view without it, and yeah.
Let's cut all that discussion short and just say a flip-up sight turned out to be not as useful as it seemed. So they made Glaz more useful by giving him the banana vision, the heat vision, infrared, whatever you want to call it. And all of a sudden, hey, this is actually really powerful, because Glaz was intended to be a sniper, someone who is at long range, who sees all the details, and suddenly he became a sight pusher. You smoke the sight, you push him with this guy, and he just murders everyone.
Yeah, he just became too multi-dimensional of an operator. They talk about the devs about how he became an entry fragger. as well with his ability. I mean, who could have predicted it? You know what I mean? Like, who would have known? Yeah, so do you want to go over the actual change?
Exactly. Yeah. So the way they're changing him to make him again more of a static angle holder, someone who gets into a position and then stops rotation, stops the defenders from pushing back. The way they're doing that is quite by simply turning off his heat vision, his infrared vision while he's moving. So if you want to see the banana vision, if you want to see yellow enemies, you have to not move. And as soon as you start moving, it disappears and it's gone. You stop moving. You can see there's sort of bars they've put on the right side of the scope that fill up and tell you, okay, now you can see in heat vision, and there you go.
It's kind of an elegant solution, right? I mean, the idea of being aimed down sights and just moving around and constantly having that vision. Now, when you begin moving, you see kind of that thermal vision not evaporate, but you see it sort of dissipate away from your target. So you're actually being forced to hold a position if you want to use his ability. Sure, I mean, you can walk around, you can still shoot people and cause the same amount of damage and do all the things that Glaz could do. However, you don't have the thermal vision.
Yeah, so if you want that, you have to be stationary. And I mean, in a game like Siege, being stationary is a weakness.
Yes.
So that is a significant nerf to his ability to push in and to frag. But at the same time, if you prepare properly, if you put down the smoke, get into your angle, and then hold, you're still able to use him in a powerful way to sort of cover and advance through smoke.
Do you prefer that solution to a cooldown? A lot of people spoke about this idea, you know how we have other operators in the game with Caveira with Silent Step. So the idea was he has a battery. Now this is quite a naff battery because it
lasts seconds.
Yes, but do you think this is a better solution to that?
I do. I do actually, because you think about, let's say there was a cooldown. You flip on your banana vision and it lasts for 5 seconds, and then you need to wait 10 seconds for it to come back. Something like that. You're not solving the problem of him being too powerful in that instance when he has it. And I think for high-level players, we're talking about maybe Pro League and Diamond, Platinum players, you would think that that time restriction isn't enough of a weakness, isn't enough of a nerf, because they can still execute in that moment. They're communicating, they can get everyone ready, and they just say, go, the smoke goes down, bang, and you have those, even if it's only 5 seconds or something like that, it's enough to be able to make that push, and it doesn't solve the problem of Glaz being an entry frag.
I'd agree with that. I think the rework that they've gone with, at least that we're going to be seeing, I believe, on the test server and whatnot, I think it's a more significant nerf to Glaz than the battery option, because obviously with the battery option, you save it for the right moment. Obviously it depends how long this rather rubbish battery lasts, but at the end of the day, you're going to use it at that specific moment when the smokes go down, when Ying's candelas go out or what have you. So particularly at higher levels, you know, in Pro League and 5 stacks in ranked.
Exactly, and this solution though, it just works. It works at all levels in exactly the same way. You can still use Glaz and he is still powerful, but you just have to use him more carefully. You have to put more thought into it. You have to create those angles first and then get into that position and play from there rather than being able to jiggle around.
100% agree.
So yeah, going to be interesting to see how that works. It is a nerf. Glaz will be less powerful, but that's a good thing for everyone, probably in the long run. Lion. Now Lion is going to change and it's going to be quite interesting. He's not going to have outlines anymore, so that's going away, and thank goodness for that, because I feel always, looking back at Lion, when he came out, that sort of outline thing, that was built for Outbreak. You click this drone and all of a sudden you see all of these alien zombie monsters. They're all highlighted and you've got the outlines. That was what the gadget was built for. It wasn't built for PvP. And I've said this, I'm sure I've said this before, I almost wish that he'd come out with 2 different versions. In Outbreak, you get the outlines and you can play against alien zombie monsters. And when you go into PvP, and look, you can even have an explanation for it. This drone is calibrated to aliens, and it doesn't quite work on humans because different heat signatures or different, I don't know. You could come up with something, and then you just say sort of, well, on humans, it pings the location, but it doesn't highlight them. Bang.
Yeah, so what they've done with... I think it's a nice solution. It's not my preferred solution. But
tell us what it is.
So basically, from what we understand from the presentation we were given at Ubisoft, was that the countdown timer for when he uses the drone is quicker. But instead of outline...
The countdown timer?
Yeah, so you know on the UI you get the
3, 2, 1.
Yeah. It seemed a lot quicker.
Okay.
But
I would also say though that the duration was shorter.
Yes, the actual duration, the effect. Yes, I would agree with that.
Okay, so they've shortened everything down.
It needs testing, right?
Yeah.
It needs to go on a spreadsheet somewhere.
I'm sure there's a MythBusters out there.
But for sure, it does need testing. But from what we saw, we never actually got to play with that build of Lion, but from what we saw, so there's that element. It's shorter, and it just pings enemies, and it was like pinging them like kind of a lot.
Yeah.
And what we couldn't necessarily distinguish from that is to were they moving, because it is a motion sensor. We think that they must have been moving just for the demonstration purposes of what they were showing us. Yeah. I still kind of don't like the operator. Just because of the global ability nature of it. And I made a video on it talking about how I would like, if you're going to have a motion sensor in the game in that way, I would like it to almost be like a Thatcher EMP. You throw it to a location and it has a specific radius. You know, it has an area of effect on the map. It doesn't just hit everyone everywhere. But I suppose, you know, we're going to see, you know, a significantly different Lion. Let's just see what happens. We haven't played with him, as I've said. Yeah. So
I think it's really safe to say now, after a lot of experience, that push a button and have an effect cover the entire map. Yeah, it's on the sort of risk-reward scale. It's all of the reward with none of the risk.
Yeah. And that's the thing, actually. One of the other things we could talk about, really, is the changes to Dokkaebi and Mute. So, for example, Dokkaebi does have that kind of global ability, which again is kind of annoying to be on the other end of, right? If you're defending and your phone's ringing and lines scanning and jackals after you, it's like this stuff of nightmares, isn't it? What they're changing that so that the phone call doesn't last forever. I think it's like, is it 18 seconds?
That's what I have in my memory, yes.
Yeah, something like 18 seconds, right? But the other cool thing is if you run as a defender, so your phone's ringing, you run into a mute jammer, into the area of effect, it will just turn that call off. Now, that mechanic was in the game before, but not exactly like that. How it existed was that if she tried to ring your phone and you was already in the radius of that mute jammer, it wouldn't ring. But now the additional benefit of the mute jammer is your phone's ringing and you just run near it and it will stop it. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's really powerful, because if you're just a few yards away from a jammer, you can still run in and it turns it off.
Yeah,
that's great. Having the phone call just stop at some point automatically without forcing you to have to stop and muck around on your phone, that's, I think, a great option as well. I mean, you still can't access your cameras during that time. You're still hampered in that time. You can still have the audio cue during that time. But if you're in a gunfight, if you're running away, if you're doing something important within the game, it doesn't force you to stop and get rid of this call. Eventually it will stop on its own. That's a significant nerf, and I think a great comfort increase for the defenders. And yeah, Mute, not only will it stop the calls if you move into them after the call has already gone off, but something else that's actually just a really nice comfort update is that now you get a little logo on the screen when you move into the area of effect of one of those jammers. It will tell you. So rather than having to guess, am I close enough, am I far enough, do I have to literally be standing right on top of it to make sure it works, you have a symbol that says, okay, you're still within range.
Do you know what? That is a great change, because how do you ever really know if you're just one step away from being in or out of the radius? So to have that little UI element on your screen, I think is actually is really cool.
Yeah.
And I think the last operator just to talk about is Capital. So changes to the LMG. the optic.
Okay, yes. So they're introducing a new. They're actually introducing several new optics. So there is the new optic that Gridlock is getting on her LMG, which is like, I think it's the same magnification. I suspect it's the same magnification as Kite's pistol, which is also the same as the ACOG.
Yeah.
So it's all the same magnification as far as I know. Testing will follow, but it's different. It looks different, so that's interesting. And I've also seen that on Mozzie the Defender, he has a different holographic sight. It's still called holographic, but it's different than the current one. So we are seeing some changes to at least some of the sights. If not, I don't know if it'll be added to all of the operators going back, or if just some new sights on some new operators, some new weapons. But yes, so first of all, he's getting new sight with the same magnification, so that's a minor change.
But the thing, yes, so that sight, because it's on the new 249 going into the game, Capital gets it. So it is an interesting change to Capital, and also there's a change to his gadget. So the area of effect on the asphyxiating bolt, the flames, if you like, that come up from it, is much greater. Okay, but also there is a downside now in that they do less damage to a defender moving through it.
Yes.
Again, it needs to be tested. We need to get the actual numbers and how it's going to impact your gameplay, whether a defender is going to be able to dart through one of those, you know, and maintain how much health it's going to take from them. All these things will end up being future videos, but interesting changes to bear in mind going into the new season.
Yeah, I think especially interesting is the whole reason for changing Capital's firebolts is to stop the sort of the ability to glitch through walls and cover. So right now you shoot the bolt somewhere and it just has this area effect, and it can sometimes work through cover. So these new bolts, they have sort of this ground effect that spreads out, and they have actually created a brand new system wherein these flames now spread around cover but not through it.
Yeah.
So again, we'll need to test those in detail to sort of get a feeling for that. But yeah, definitely interesting change to Capital. Will it make him more or less viable? I mean, I think the point was, again, they wanted to take Capital back to the original intention. The original intention was that he can hold certain rotations. He can, after a plant has gone down, or while a plant is going down, while a push is going on, he can put a firebolt in a doorway or in some kind of passage that will then block the defenders from being able to push forward and defend. That was his intention, but what he's kind of drifted over to is that the firebolts are used almost like frag grenades. They're used in a very offensive manner. You are attacking, you just fire this bolt at a defender that's hiding somewhere, and obviously it kills very quickly once you're in the area of effect, and it went through cover or above cover, around cover. So it just became this attacking weapon rather than a more defensive oriented weapon. And so that's what these changes are. Larger, greater spread, but also won't clip.
I think it's largely meant to be a buff as well, and the reason I feel that is just from the wind deltas, the graphs that we've seen. I haven't got them in front of me, but I do kind of recall him being in underpicked, underpowered, and it being sort of... I remember thinking to myself, I wouldn't be surprised if they changed him, but like I haven't seen that graph since they released it, which is a good few weeks.
Do you think it's fair to say that Capital is maybe the weakest 3-speed operator on attack that we have?
Possibly, you know...
Because 3 speeds, they are the attacking force, they are the meta. But then you think of Capital, he's a 3-speed, but you never think of him as one of those 3 speeds. You never think of him as an entry fragger and as someone who's quick and nimble and can peek. He's not, is he?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I'd rather have, you know, Ash for the R4C without the ACOG. You got IQ with the 552 Commando. Hibana obviously has great utility. I think Capital, when he first came into the game, he was hands down, without exaggeration, my favourite attacking operator, because he had the grenades as well as those firebolts. But since then, and with the Para 308...
Yeah, think back to the Para 308. When the Para 308 launched, it actually had more than 50 damage. So against 3-speed defenders, two shots to kill. It was incredibly powerful. It had a slow rate of fire, but it hit like a truck. Now It's still one of the hardest hitting guns, but the fire rate is just so pants. You've still got that 3 shots to get down or kill. Yeah, the guns are not great on Capitao.
I would love OG Capitao. I'll be honest. I would be.
You can say that for almost every operator.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they do tend to get nerfed, but you know, people say, oh, you know, these balances happen and it's good for the game, and I do agree with that. But when it comes to Capitao specifically, I would love OG Capitao.
Yeah. When his gun came out, I just thought, oh wow, 7.62, this parafoul. Just a great fun weapon to have. It felt so powerful. It felt the sound was awesome. But yeah, after all the changes to balance them a bit more, it's just like, yeah, no, I prefer an F2 any day that just sprays out death. But there you go. So those are the changes to the operators. Interesting times, and I'm really happy to see sort of Rainbow Six go a bit back towards the old days, where we don't just get the new operators who then get nerfed a little bit and that's it for the whole season, and we're seeing more interesting changes coming sort of midway through the season to sort of just bring us back to a shorter refresh cycle. So definitely really interested in seeing this. Now, we're going to continue this discussion, but it'll be over on Pete's channel. We'll have a few other interesting topics to discuss. So there'll be a link in the description, and you will see a note on the screen right now where you can go over and watch that. So do join us there.
Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.
See you then.